Well, hello again and welcome inside the Fantasy Champion Show. I'm Nick Anastos alongside Bob Morin. Week number 13 in the NFL. Fantasy playoffs right around the corner. Only a few weeks left to get yourself into the postseason. I'm Nick Anastos alongside Bob Morin. A lot to talk about. We'll begin the show as we always do with shout-outs. First of all, back-to-back good games have warranted back-to-back shout-outs from Bob Morin. You know who he is. BJ GE.
Oh yeah, the law firm. Some people might say I'm really.
Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis' #1 fan.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'm just giving the guy props. I started him this week. I could say Tom Brady, Arian Foster, but they get enough credit. Let's give it to the law firm. Doing me well.
Beanie Wells, another guy who I would like to give a shout out, came back strong after a lengthy absence or injured his leg earlier in the season, came back and scored 2 touchdowns. Not a great production from the carries aspect. Did have 16-17, but was limited to just 45 yards. But again, did score 2 touchdowns and has really taken the lion's share of the carries moving forward. 16 of the 17 Cardinal carries went to Beanie Wells in his first week back. So I like him. A little bit of knee swelling midweek has caused some concerns for injuries moving forward, but should be a start as well for the Cardinals in Week 13.
Yeah, I was a fan of Beanie. I thought he looked good out there when he made that touchdown run where he kind of turned the corner. He had some speed. He looked good, but
That's nice of you to say.
Yeah, I thought he looked good. Well, I can't comment on this.
Well,
section?
crediting one of my players is a rare occurrence here.
No, I thought he looked good though, but like you just said, the knee swelling, is it going to be an issue the rest of the year? I don't know.
It's always something with Beanie Wells. Bryce Brown put on a show on Monday night for Philadelphia, even though the Eagles fell against Carolina. And not too many people, fantasy owners across the country, really had him in the lineup. Although, if you were smart and ahead of the game, we told you last week that he was a talent coming out of high school, needed a platform to really shine. He gets that Monday night with LaShawn McCoy missing his second straight game with a concussion. He'll be out again. So now Bryce Brown is the hottest name out there. Problem is he's not very available at this point in the season.
Yeah, no, I think he could still be out there. Probably not today, actually. A lot of the waivers are on Wednesday. But, yeah, you probably missed the boat. But he's a guy who, you could definitely start this week. He looked real good. What do you have, like 180 yards rushing?
He was all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. He looked good. So right now, if you could use a guy, you have some injuries to McCoy or whatnot, plug him in for sure.
All right, let's take a look now at quarterback starts and sits here on the Week 13 edition of the Fantasy Champion Show. Andy Dalton is a guy who has been quietly getting it done over the last month or so and continues to reward fantasy owners at this point. You like him again this week.
Yeah, I like him against San Diego. I think they've been real suspect to the pass, and Dalton's on fire. So, why not with A.J. Green? Like I said last week, I think between him and Green Ellis, I've been saying ride them, and they've been producing. Both of them, the whole offense on. Cincinnati's been doing great.
Dalton, 26 fantasy points in week number 12, top 7 ranking at the quarterback position. Bob Morin and company enjoying that. All right, how about a player that doesn't play for you? Russell Wilson. You're a self-pronounced Wisconsin fan. You liked him from the college days. But here he is in his rookie season with Seattle, taking a step forward each and every week. It seems like he's earned the trust of the coaching staff to open up the playbook. They go deep more. They let him throw in the red zone. His total throws are up per game. He's a physical guy, a big guy who can run. He's athletic, can get outside the pocket. And I think at this point in his rookie season, Seattle has basically taken the training wheels off, and it showed lately. 4 straight weeks of at least 20 fantasy points. Ride the Russell Wilson train, Bob.
Yeah, I love Russell Wilson. I just don't think the guy gets enough respect. You're talking about it, all these numbers and whatnot, and people don't even realize, what he's doing out there in Seattle. Like I have a coworker I was actually talking about Russell Wilson with today, and he absolutely thought Russell Wilson was awful. And I'm like, are you watching the games? Because all his arguments weren't really adding up. He's like, do you think Russell Wilson will ever win a Super Bowl? And I'm like, that really doesn't matter to me right now. Is he that type of quarterback? I don't know. We'll see.
Which
you
coworker
never know.
was this?
We'll just keep the names off the record. I think Russell Wilson is he's a good player, and he isn't a big guy though. You said he was a big guy. He's not huge. He is athletic. He's not like Cam Newton size or RG3. He's not as tall as RG3. He's short. I think he's like 6 feet.
He's only 6'2".
All right, well, I think Wilson's like 6 feet.
I don't know. It seems like
either way, he's quick, he's fast,
right.
Perfect with Pete Carroll in that offense over there. So yeah, ride the wave.
They are at Chicago, by the way. Bears defense could throw a wrinkle.
We'll see. We'll see what Russell Wilson's made out of this week.
Here's a guy red hot over the last 2 weeks. Chad Henne, back from the dead. Newly found fame in Jacksonville. Nearly pulled off the impossible a couple of weeks ago when the Jaguars had a late lead against Houston, but ultimately surrendered the lead and lost in overtime. But Chad Henne had a good game, followed it up with a good game last week, and here in Week 13 faces a suspect secondary with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I love Henne this week. What does he have, 6 touchdowns in 2 games already? Yeah, and he has some receivers that can burn, and he has an arm. That's never been the problem with him. So, you know, the deep game has been good. If they can find a running game and get something going and the defense plays well.
You like the Jacksonville passing game as a
whole?
Yeah,
I like it right now a lot.
Shorts
definitely.
And Blackmon being
and
viable
Jennings
weapons.
Can be good out of the backfield. And then Mercedes Lewis, you know, we've seen him before.
Well, that's
so.
interesting. That brings us to the running back segment here when you mentioned Jennings here on the Fantasy Champion Show with Nick Anastos and Bob Morin. Jennings was a guy, obviously no secret, I've been high on all season. Disappointed me a little bit with lackluster play. Offensive line didn't really get much of a push overall in those 3 games based on what I saw. But I still think he's a big, athletic guy who has proven it in the past. Last year he had 5 yards a carry in limited work, but was the main guy in a couple of those games late in the season and proved that he could handle the workload. Now, again, there's no one else to give the ball to in Jacksonville.
Parmalee is out now, too.
Parmalee is on IR. Jones-Drew not ready to come back. There are only so many touches to go around when you have 2 or 3 backs handling it. When there's only 1 back, however, that in itself is a big fantasy advantage and something to consider.
Talked about that.
Right. So for that fact alone, I like Jennings this week to at least consider. I'm not saying start him. I'm not going quite that far. But he's worth a consideration at the flex
somebody
spot.
For sure.
A consideration because Buffalo quietly, their front 7 has improved against the run back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Against the Dolphins.
But there will be points
against the Colts.
There'll be points.
There'll be
this
points.
Week, though,
There'll be points. Yeah. But maybe not as many on the ground as you think. All right, that leads us to DeAngelo Williams. Let's start there with the Carolina Panthers in Kansas City.
Yeah, another situation where another back on the team is down. Jonathan Stewart out this week. And, you know, I was talking before the show, and I think DeAngelo can always break one. And I feel like he could against Kansas City. Their run defense, it's all right. But I just think DeAngelo is due to come back to fantasy relevance. And you could be smart if you had him in the lineup.
Yeah, that's not – well, Carolina's attack is formulated around the run to begin with.
Exactly.
Which is, again, always an advantage moving forward. Steven Jackson against the Niners. On paper, at quick glance, you might say I might shy away. But Steven Jackson's been on fire. 38 fantasy points over the last 3 games. A Week 10 performance against that 49er front 7 where he ran for over 100 yards and caught 25 more and scored a touchdown.
I'm shying.
He's quietly been getting healthier. His carries have quietly increased, and he's quietly produced over the last month or so for the Rams.
Yeah, I'm shying away, though, this week on him. I'm going to have to disagree with you. I love
you don't
Steven
think he
Jackson.
can do it back-to-back against the Niners?
I think he had a minor injury. It's nothing to be worried about, but I heard he missed some practice time this week. So whatever, everybody does. He's getting old, especially a veteran. So that's pretty common. I just don't think San Fran's going to let him do it again. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball like they did when they tied him. I think it's going to be a much different outcome, and I don't think the opportunity is going to be there for him.
All right, how about sits for sure? Here's one we agree on, Reggie Bush for the Dolphins.
Yeah, he's looked like garbage. He had a decent week last week, correct?
Decent.
It was all right. Mediocre for him, I guess, for a lot of teams having him as your number 1 or 2 back. Probably wasn't what you wanted, but I would just stay away from him. I don't like...
Well, they had 14 points.
14 points, so that's good, actually. I would take that pretty decent. More than mediocre.
A top 15 performer at running back.
So not bad at all, but before that, he was just garbage.
That's a strong number 2 in the lineup.
Yeah, it is. It is a strong number 2. I'm just not a big fan of them against the Pats. They've been stopping the run, and I just think they're going to be down, and they're going to resort to just throwing, and I don't know if Bush will get involved.
Plus, I don't know how many carries he's going to get either.
Yeah, Thomas has been getting more carries there.
Right, they've been working him in slowly. All right, how about another sit? Tonight's game, which surprised me when you told me off air, Michael Turner. 1, Bob Morin owns him. 2, facing the New Orleans Saints, known to give up a lot of points. And 3, facing the New Orleans Saints, who have been known to give up a lot of points.
Just not there. You know, we're talking about opportunity. He's been getting like 10 to 12 carries a game, and the only time he becomes relevant is if it's a goal line opportunity.
But that Atlanta offense overall is so good in the red zone especially.
But that Atlanta offense
that they
has been
have
like
a
that.
lot of inside the 5 goal line situations, and he's unchallenged in terms of priority.
He is,
getting the
but
rock down by
they've
the goal line.
been using play action, and Tony Gonzalez has been getting more involved on the goal line. I just feel like Turner hasn't had the goal line like, let's give it to him. He's going to get it in 80% of the time. It's been under 50% of the time this year he's converted. Might even be under 40. You know, it's not Michael Turner of the past. So it's not a huge surprise, I feel, for me really not starting him.
This is the Week 13 edition of the Fantasy Champion Show. I'm Nick Anastos, Bob Morin, MC the Brick behind the camera. It's all business this week, apparently, between the two of us. A little underlying tension. We'll preview that later with our bet of the week as Bob Morin's New Hampshire Black Bears go up against my Hempstead Hooer Killers. The wide receiver spot, guy you like, Mohamed Sanu, who has been producing, another guy flying perhaps under the fantasy radar quite consistently over the last few weeks.
Yeah, this guy has 4 touchdowns in the past 3 games, and around the red zone, he's been as great of a target, as you'll find in the league. So I like him. He's a big guy. He's a rookie. A lot of people that don't know about him or can't take him because you're in a keeper league that you have a player pool and can't get him. He's going to be I think relevant next year.
All right, how about Ryan Broyles for the Lions? He's I don't know if I wanted to use the word firecracker, but that's the first one that came to mind when I see his play. He's explosive, he's small, but he's quietly found a niche in that Detroit passing game.
Yeah, with Titus Young being gone, that's another story to get into. But last week on Thanksgiving, you probably saw who Broyles was if you already didn't know who he was. 6 catches, like 125 yards, and I think he had 12 targets on the game. I'm pretty sure it's like 12 targets, which anytime a receiver's getting that many targets, he should be in some lineups, especially in that offense.
Yeah.
Because Kelvin Johnson, you would think, depending on how many receptions he has, maybe gets 15 targets a game, sometimes the 12, 13 range. Because I would say anything above 15, that's a lot of targets.
Well, I think anything above a dozen.
Yeah, it is. So that's what I'm
targets.
saying. 12 targets for a guy like this, a number 2 receiver, coming through. Everyone's been talking about, I'm sure, Detroit, saying, when is this number 2 going to come around? We saw Nate Burleson, but we knew he wasn't their plan.
Yeah.
It's always been Titus Young, but now Broyles steps in.
Right.
I think he could do well again this week.
All right, how about sits? And I agree here as well. Mike Wallace. I'd sit everybody, first of all, in a Steelers uniform unless Ben Roethlisberger does return. I think that's still up in the air as of press time. And then, of course, Baltimore, they're on the other side of that game. Second meeting this month between the two squads. And nobody on Baltimore is going to be able to get open, in my opinion, because the Steelers are that good in the secondary. They are scary good. And I have heard, I think, too much about people saying about the Steelers. The first thing that comes to their mind is how old they are and how banged up they are.
Games.
Polamalu's out. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you watch games, you see how quick the Steelers are to the ball, how well they wrap up, how quick they can come on the outside on the blitz, coming off the edge and pressure the quarterback. Still, that's been their MO, as we know, for years. But I think this Steeler group right now, the ones on the field healthy playing the games, are as good as they are in the NFL, and that's why I avoid all Baltimore receivers this week without a question.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sitting all of them. I agree with you 100%. Last 6 games, and I've tossed out stats like this before for big-name receivers that Pittsburgh shut down, but the past 6 games they haven't let
Torrey
over.
Smith was shut down in Week 10.
Well, past 6 games they have not let over 10 fantasy points to an opposing receiver. So, if you're expecting more than 10 points out of your Baltimore receiver, don't start them. But if you are happy with 6 or 7, then go right ahead.
All right. Other green lights we forgot with wide receivers. Ryan Broyles, who mentioned him. Obviously, tonight's game, the Thursday night game between the Saints and the Falcons. Green lights everywhere for Jones, White, Gonzalez, Colston, Lance Moore. I think everybody has got to go because there is going to be about 65 or so points scored tonight, perhaps. All right, tight ends. Real quick, Dallas Clark, a guy that I drafted, by the way, for the Bucks. Had to let him go early on, but he's had a resurgence here over the last month, and you like him to continue that streak.
Yeah, I think he's going to show Denver this week why they should have brought him on board. He's looking good. He's coming back from injury. I think he's becoming healthy. And he is relevant on the fantasy radar. He has been for a few weeks, and I'm noticing more people picking him up, and especially with Rob Gronkowski out, Hernandez playing, hurt, and some other tight ends, iffy here and there. He's a good play.
All right, I like Owen Daniels. How's that?
I do too.
I like Owen Daniels with Houston. They're playing Tennessee. Tennessee's on the downswing. Just got beat again by a underperforming Jacksonville Jaguars team. Houston should have no problem with them. They'll run, they'll pass, they'll go play action. He's good in the middle of the field. He has a juicy lineup. He gets a lot of targets. Another guy kind of flying under the radar that has made a difference in the past and is making a difference in 2012. Should make a bigger difference here in Week 13, Owen Daniels. All right, how about defense? Should we just throw some out for fun here? We don't usually do defense on the Fantasy Champion show, but let's add some defense here. We got a couple minutes.
Sure.
You mentioned the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I have the New England Patriots in a team defense league. In the past 2 weeks, they put up monster points. 21 this past week on Thanksgiving against the Jets, which was a fun game to watch. And then the week before it was like 18 or 19. So they've been doing really well, and I like them. And then as far as IDPs go, I'm going to give some props out to Cortland Finnegan on the Rams. He's been doing well. He's the number 2 cornerback in the league as far as fantasy points go, and he was good for 11 this past week, so not a bad play.
I like the Cardinals defense because they have been making plays quietly, even though the Cards have been losing.
Probably one of the only reasons why they've been in games.
Right.
They beat the Patriots early in the season. Their athletic group. We have talked about the Cardinals, I think, defense earlier in the season.
Middle.
Yeah, I like them too.
All right. Finally, we'll close the show with our bet. Last week we had 2 bets going, and of course we split, so we remain even.
What were the bets?
I was correct about Vic Ballard being held under 10 fantasy points against the Bills. He was contained. And what was I wrong on, Bob?
It was Denarius Moore of the Raiders.
Unfortunately.
He had 8 points, and I think it was 10 or 12.
Well,
he might have went up.
A score.
He had
So
20. He had
points.
1 catch for 20 yards and a score, and his 1 catch was in the second half. He pretty much got shut down.
Falling short of our over-under of 10 points.
So we're tied for the season.
All right. So here's the scenario in our fantasy league. Bob and I in the Dynasty League, not having the greatest of seasons. It's been a sad turn of events recently. We are both pretty much out of the playoff picture, although maybe not mathematically, but
No, not mathematically, but
probably realistically. So what do we have to look forward to? Well, the rematch. I won back in week number 4, and I'm going to win again here in week number 13, and that is this week's Fantasy Champion Show Bet of the Week.
I'm going to win this week.
So straight up, no line, no spread,
No
nonsense.
that's fine.
Even though I'm the favorite, so that probably works in my favor. All right. For MC the Brick, my partner Bob Morin, I'm Nick Anastos saying so long, good luck, and we'll talk again next week. Fantasy season fast approaching the end of the regular season. One final time, check us out on Facebook as well. You can find us at the Fantasy Champion Show. There's an archived listing of all our previous shows. Make sure you check them out and spread the word. All right, I'm Nick Anastos. Goodbye and good luck. See you later. What are you, Sean Hannity?